1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2. This is Derrick Broze with Conscious Resistance Network. Today is May 4th, Friday, May 4th, 2018, and I'm coming at you live from Houston, Texas. If you can hear me okay, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I'm going to share this out on a couple pages. Today we have some important information that I want to talk to you in this short segment. This is actually the Conscious Resistance Live, my podcast, episode number 86. And the first time I've been broadcasting in, well, a few months, let's just say that for the moment. I've been very busy living my life and trying to do my work to spread consciousness and raise awareness and use journalism and the important things that I have in my life, the valuable tools that I have in my life to spread information. And I've been doing that in the real world a lot, increasingly speaking publicly and talking publicly, but still doing these acts of journalism, I guess you could say, random acts of journalism. And I'm back though. So let me know if you can hear me okay. If my mic sounds okay, I'm using this new headset, and hopefully it's working good for you. And if you cannot hear me, then just let me know, and then we'll get started. Top two stories of the day. We're going to talk about Syria, the war in Syria. If you couldn't tell by the title of the video, war in Syria, as well as the CIA nomination of Gina Haspel, who is just the latest, and all. I feel pretty safe in saying this, war criminal to be put into a position of power. What's up, Damon? I can see your thumbs up. Glad to have you on board, brother. I'll try to get the links in there to you guys who are watching, but if not, then we'll catch it later. So first off, be sure to visit theconsciousresistance.com if you're brand new to this platform, and of course you might be, because as I said, I haven't been doing it for a bit of a while now. I've been just living my life and doing journalism in the real world, but still, go to theconsciousresistance.com. Check out our About page. I get this sort of comment from time to time, what are you consciously resisting? And I think it's meant to be sort of a mockery of like the name that we use and saying like, what does that even mean, right? And I guess it could be confusing, conscious resistance. Sometimes people, I've noticed in my last 5-6 years of having a website called The Conscious Resistance and building these ideas, that people can confuse the word conscience, like you have a conscience about the horrible things you do, with being conscious. They think those words are the same, so they sometimes say the conscience, conscientious resistance, or my conscious. There's different ways people go about it, and they don't necessarily understand. Well, you can check the About page; it's pretty helpful, or go to our Facebook page. There's a video I did just called "What is the Conscious Resistance?" that explains it. But check that out, and of course our latest report, starting with the ones we are going to cover today, dissecting the Syrian conflict. So before we get into all that, though, I'm going to go ahead and share this out. And if you don't mind, if you're watching, those of you who are tuned in, please share this out on any Facebook pages you may have, or groups you may admin, or your personal timeline if you feel so inclined. We're going to be talking about some important topics, namely Syria, CIA. These are things that are affecting you now. And then I put towards the end of the title something about cultural appropriation. We may or may not get into that depending on how much time I have. I'm going to try to keep this short because in about an hour, 2 hours, I'm going to be flying out of Houston to San Diego to speak at Libertopia this weekend in San Diego. So I'll be speaking tomorrow evening, and I'm excited about that. So if you're in San Diego and you haven't heard of Libertopia, check out libertopia.org. And of course, if you use my name, I think there's a link, Derrick Broze, libertopia.org/Derrick Broze, or something along those lines. I'll see if I can find it before the end of the show for anybody who's interested. And you get like a 10% discount for your attendance of this festival and this conference. And there's like 90 different speakers, including Ben Swan, who we're about to talk about in a moment. Just all kinds of great activists and great people. So check it out. And so I'm sharing this now on the Mind Unleashed Wake Up News, where you should see a jump in viewers in just a moment. And thank you to everybody who else is sharing. And the other thing, besides sharing this, the other thing you can do for me is to comment below and let us know where you're listening from. And I think that's all the sort of taking care of logistics that I need to do now. Let's move on to the stories. Just to recap, share this if you can, and let us know where you're listening from. Also visit theconsciousresistance.com, which you should be able to see. We're going to be adding more content. Hopefully we're getting new subscribers, new followers. I just returned from Portugal and Spain, so we're seeing a growth in our following, and that's really cool. So check out the website if you have, consciousresistance.com. And now the story of the day that I really want to get into is Syria, the Syrian conflict, ongoing conflict, and what it means for us in the United States, where I'm based, and for those who are abroad, because as I mentioned, I just came back from Portugal and Spain, and this affects people all over the world. If the United States and NATO, like what one of the Portuguese friends I made told me was, well, we're a part of NATO as well. So that means, they're a part of this organization that will go to war, and they will, since part of their arrangement with NATO is that the countries all agree to defend and protect each other and these kind of things. So because of that, Portuguese soldiers may go fight these battles if the U.S. gets involved. So it's important for them as well. It affects them, not just those here in the United States and in the UK and France and elsewhere who are actually actively sending troops to people. So yeah, to kill people in Syria, unfortunately. So now let's get into this, though. I wrote an article recently for benswan.com, and you can find it on my journalism profile. Damon, if you want to grab that real quick, it was about the source of funding, the source of reports, ground reports in Syria. Those who were claiming that they found no evidence of gas attacks in Syria, those who are claiming that it was done by the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad. Now, of course, this is the focus of the report here right now from Ben Swan. You check this out, Reality Check, Who's Funding the White Helmets. This report looks into the funding of the organization known as the White Helmets. If you've never heard about them, then I guess you really haven't been paying much attention to the situation. But go back a year or two and you saw this documentary about them on Netflix. And to me, when I see a story like this where it's being pushed across the media, not just the media saying like, oh my God, we found this impartial source of brave people who are just telling us about all the atrocities happening in Syria, and they're our only source of real and accurate information. And then you see a documentary come out about them on Netflix where they're just being pushed in the minds of the masses. To me, that reeks of a propaganda campaign. That's all I can really think. It's like, okay, they want me to think about these people. They want me to know who they are. They're giving them awards, which to most Americans, that means like, oh, this is a good documentary. I should watch this, right? And then more people see it, and on and on and on. So if you see this article that's on the screen right now, Examining Ground Reports from Syria, I would like you to read that when you get a moment. I'm going to post that link in there if Damon hasn't already. And basically, it shows that no matter what side of the affair you take, whether you think that Bashar al-Assad is some kind of horrible person who's killing his people, and evidence shows that in different times he has suppressed his people. I'm not going to sit here and be a champion of any president or any tyrant or any dictator. But recent attacks as far back as 2013, are these things actually accurate, or are they coming from a place of the United States wanting to infiltrate and to get into the country and to push? And as my article shows here, the situation is more complex than the 24-hour corporate news cycle would have you believe. Some people say it's an open and shut case, that it's obvious that Assad was using weapons, and again, we have the White Helmets as sources. But when you start looking at it and you look at some of the foreign journalists that get in there, there are some things that don't quite add up. And this article looks at that. So please check it out from truthandmedia.com, which is the website founded by journalist Ben Swan. And Ben Swan himself just released a report, which is apparently part 1 of 2, called Who's Funding the White Helmets? So I'm going to play a clip of this real quick, and I want you guys just to check this out. This is important because remember, this is those of you who are following, maybe those who may be listening and are even skeptical at this moment, saying like, look, Assad definitely gassed his own people. You have to ask yourself, what is the source of that? Maybe you say, well, I heard it on the news or I read it in the paper. And what is the source that they say? They say it is this group known as the White Helmets. And I'll show you just a short clip of the 6-minute video, and you can get an idea of what you might think about this situation.
White Helmets claim to be a neutral entity in Syria.
Who's funding the White Helmets? So I'm going to play a clip of this real quick, and I want you guys just to check this out. This is important because remember, this is those of you who are following, maybe those who may be listening and are even skeptical at this moment, saying like, look, Assad definitely gets.
And here's the thing: untangling these ties.
You have to ask yourself, what is the source of that? Maybe you say, good, I heard it on the.
So stay with me. Here we go. According to their website, the Syria Civil Defense, nicknamed the White Helmets, actually formed in late 2012 to early 2013 as self-organized groups. Realizing they needed training, 20 Syrians went to Turkey back in March of 2013 to learn from a former British Army officer named James Le Mesurier. Now, Le Mesurier, he has ties to the failed NATO intervention in Kosovo. He developed a training program for Syrians. It included trauma care, command and control, and crisis management courses. He is specifically credited for helping form the White Helmet's structure and the White Helmet's operations. Le Mesurier was able to fund the training for the program, though, through Mayday.
Okay, so it goes on from there. I'm going to stop it there. But I want you guys to look into that and look further. As usual, don't trust me, don't take me for granted, or even Ben. Follow the links in there. It's a very well documented report. You can see all the links that go into it, and judge for yourself. Because it's important to do that. Look, I'm not here to sit here and act like I have everything figured out, which is why my article, I actually wrote 2 articles, one for Ben Swann's Truth in Media and one for Activist Post. One was called Examining Ground Reports from Syria. The other was called Examining Evidence for Chemical Attack. And again, in both situations, what I found is that it's not cut and dry. You can't simply say, this group did this or this group did this, or this report is right and this report is right, because there's so much conflicting information and misinformation, and it's just it's difficult. You're not going to really find a perfect truth among this situation, and that's sad, but that's the reality that we're dealing with. Okay, so anyone who's trying to sell you that it's completely cut and dry one way or the other, I think is biased, and we all have our biases, and it's important for us to question those and to be objective and to push past them. So Ben puts out this report talking about funding for white helmets, and it's important to look into that. Again, please, I cannot stress that enough. Look into this white helmets. If you're going to go out there and posting on social media, talking about what's going on as if you know something, then and your only source is going to be the media, which is using the white helmets as their source, then at least do some freaking homework and know what you're talking about. So now it's been reported just today that, according to CBS News, the White Helmets, who are known as the Syrian Civil Defense, have reportedly not received funds from the U.S. in recent weeks, leaving the controversial group uncertain of how a, quote, long-term or permanent halt in funding would impact their future operations. The cease in funding reportedly stems from President Trump's decision in late March to freeze $200 million in U.S. recovery funding for Syria as part of a strategic overhaul. CBS News reports that an internal State Department document stated that its Near East Bureau needed confirmation from the administration to greenlight funding for White Helmets in Syria by April 15th, or the department would initiate, quote, shutdown procedures on a rolling basis. So basically they're saying, if they didn't get updates by last month, they were going to stop funding the White Helmets, and that may or may not be true. I guess we'll have to wait and just kind of hold off and see. But this is an interesting development, that perhaps the White Helmets are already losing support and they're already losing funding. Once again, these reports are coming from truthandmedia.com, Ben Swann's truthandmedia.com. Just a moment ago, we played his actual video. You heard some of that clip. Now I'm just posting the link for those who are watching live, and if you're not watching live, I'll still put this in there. Now, moving on to the other, well, hold on, before I just move along so quick, I don't want to just breeze through this. I am trying to do this in a shorter time span, but the Syrian people, the truth deserves more than a couple of moments, right? So I just went over, as I said, several reports that look into who's using chemical weapons and whose ground reports we should believe, whether it's American journalists or British journalists or Russian journalists or what have you. And who's funding the White Helmets, which is one of the main sources. We saw that Ben Swann has put out a great report. Also, I recommend from James Corbett, the Corbett Report on YouTube and elsewhere. It's called The White Helmets Are a Propaganda Construct. Again, very well documented. Look into that. Follow the groups mentioned and see what you think about it. I mean, draw your own conclusions in the end, right? But look into these things, and it's important to do that because we are seeing a push, and this is one of the things I mentioned in my article, is that we're seeing the continuation of a push that's been existing since 9/11, since 2001, 9/11. You guys know if you've been paying attention. If not, I recommend, again, checking out my article because I show the video clip where General Wesley Clark, very well respected in the military, went on Democracy Now! And elsewhere has said that after 9/11 he was shown a list of 7 countries that the U.S. was going to invade simply because they had the ability to and that they want to spread freedom and democracy all over the world. Now, Syria was on that list and Iran was as well, and we're getting towards the end of that list. So some would say what we're currently seeing unfold here is just the latest and a long plan of taking over nations. I mean, pretty much that's really all it comes down to. Now I'm going to move on to the next story, though. I tell you that as a journalist, I've done the homework, and I don't see very strong evidence for at least a few of these attacks being blamed on the Assad administration. And I also say, just as a human being, that it's horrible that this is taking place, and that someone out there thinks that it's appropriate to pull false flags. And we know that the U.S. government, if you've never looked up Operation Northwoods, declassified government documents discussing a plan to fake an attack, to use fake planes, to pretend to shoot down planes, or to shoot down planes and blame it on the Cubans. We've known that the U.S. government and the CIA specifically has had a hand in overthrowing governments around the world. And I know many people out there would like to believe that the deep state is no longer in control because the Trump administration is against that or something. But if you're buying that narrative, you're really just falling for another layer of the deception. The Trump administration, just like all the presidential administrations, are part of the same game that many are standing against now. It's not, there wasn't a victory for the people whenever Donald Trump was elected, not by any means, because the system is so controlled, the media is so controlled, the education system is a propaganda machine, and there is no way to crack that from within it. You don't crack that, and then violent overthrow is not going to work either. The only answer is to outgrow, overthrow, vacate, opt out of the system and build something better, not to put your energy and time into these things, because it's not going to take place. I'm sorry, we would like to believe that. It sometimes seems simple and easy. All we have to do is change the people in power and things will get better, but that's really a lazy way of looking at things. I hate to break it to you. That's a lazy way of seeing the world, because from that perspective, you could say that all we have to do is reform this, right? Reform this and this institution. Maybe you say all we have to do is run for president. That might be an interesting idea, right? Get the right guy to run for president. Maybe somebody who says they're going to get rid of government via the government, or that they're going to fix everything and they're going to make sure that everybody has all the health care that they want and free education and all these different programs that people want. My point is, you could have somebody coming in and promising the best things depending on what your perspective is politically, and at the end of the day they will either be corrupted before they are able to make it into the office and have any real effect, or they'll be scared or threatened away, or just when it comes down to it, as we've seen in the past, they'll just straight up ignore them, like say maybe Ron Paul, or Bernie Sanders wasn't really ignored, but he was definitely pushed out of the front line by the Democratic establishment, and ultimately he caved and endorsed Hillary Clinton. So, like, as I said, either you become ignored or you accept that you are a part of the machine and you start playing the game. Maybe you get threatened. I mean, I don't know what happens behind the scenes necessarily. Or some would say you get killed like JFK and other people who just die in mysterious ways. So those are the things that you can get if you're a legitimate freedom fighter fighting from within the system. If you are coming in, you're shaking up the system, you're challenging that, then you're not going to have a good time. They're going to try to slow you down. They're going to try to get in your way. They're not just going to stand by and let somebody challenge the system. So my goal then is to avoid putting energy, time, money, keep as much of my money out of the grubby hands of the military and the state and the military-industrial complex and all these things, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the corporate, industrial complex, the corporate media, all of these things. Take your energy, your time away from them, your money away from them, opt out at every opportunity, redirect that energy, that time, that money, just your life, and redirect it towards your own community, your own self, empowering, uplifting yourself, and building better things now. So that's just my suggestion, right? Now, the next article we're going to go over here is not even posted yet. It's going to be posted shortly on truthandmedia.com. It's about Gina Haspel, who is the current CIA Deputy Director, currently nominated to be the head of the CIA. And I'm showing you guys a preview of this because it's not out yet and it still needs to be edited. So excuse if you see any mistakes here. But the CIA is preparing to defend the nomination of known torturer Gina Haspel. She, as I mentioned, she's the current Deputy Director of the CIA, nominee to head the agency, and facing a wave of resistance from civil liberties advocates, senators, physicians, and others who say that her connections to torture programs make her unfit to head the CIA. Actually, it probably makes her more fit than anything to head the CIA, because the CIA is known for torture, for overthrowing legitimately elected governments, and for assassinations, for all kinds of crazy things. Haspel was involved in CIA black site prisons in Thailand and other foreign nations and is known to have supported the use of torture. Also, she's accused of destroying taped evidence of waterboarding and other forms of torture. Just yesterday, The Hill reported that the Trump administration, the administration I was just talking about, the Trump administration drafted a 27-page memo full of talking points that are meant to bolster the standing of Gina Haspel during her nomination hearing, which is taking place next week on May 9th. So, according to The Hill, the 5 main talking points emphasize Haspel's experience and common sense. So they want you to know, like, look, yeah, she may torture people. She may have destroyed evidence and violated the law and done so to protect essentially other lawbreakers and other criminals, but she has experience and she's got common sense leadership. And also, here's the best part, they try to sell you some bullshit feminism and tell you that one of the talking points to use if you're a supporter of Gina Haspel and your question about her is to say, well, she will be the first woman to lead the intelligence agency. So that's great, right? That's like a big step up for women. And this is the sort of bullshit feminism that I am against. I don't really spend much time talking about feminism because I think it's a sensitive topic, but I just will say this. I believe in feminism. I believe in anarcho-feminism. That's one way to put it. Non-state feminism. When women come together and recognize the power and the beauty of themselves and seek solutions as individuals, but also as empowered women coming together in sisterhood and finding those solutions, and also men who want to help out women who recognize the need for this, and without using the force of government, and also without going from one extreme to the other and going from this sort of bastardization of what femininity could be and the sacred feminine, and some would say toxic masculinity and these sort of things, not going from one place of imbalance to the other, but people who actually strive for balance and for appreciation and connection of all people in general, regardless of their sex or gender or anything, but also definitely respecting these dualities and this balance. That is not what they are talking about here. Instead, they want to say, oh, look, if a woman gets elected president, then that's something amazing, right? Well, guess what? Just because she's a woman doesn't mean that she won't go drone bomb people, or that she won't continue the wars or won't continue the surveillance. Just because a freaking woman gets elected to the CIA, a woman who is already accused of torture, of at least ordering other people to torture, because that's the thing, is these kind of people, they won't get their hands dirty, but they're definitely psychopaths, because either they've totally bought into the statist idea that they are truly keeping America safe by torturing some people that they kidnap. They call it rendition, just like they call torture enhanced interrogation. But the truth is, they kidnap people from around the world and they torture them. And I'm sure some of you out there hearing this, you're like, well, all I need is to know about torture I learned on 9/11 or something silly like that. There's always somebody out there who's ready to defend torture, but it's bullshit that we have to even have this conversation. And the fact that somebody who has ordered torture and then not even just like ordered it, but is known as the sort of the head of this entire torture program, or at least a big aspect of it in Thailand and elsewhere, and then helped destroy evidence. Like, this person is being considered for one of the highest positions in the country of an agency that is known to create like poison dart guns and order assassinations of people and overthrow governments and run drugs and just all kinds of crazy things. If you don't know anything about the CIA, get some education on, go learn about them. It's extremely interesting. It's also extremely disturbing. So check that out. But this woman is now going to be put into a position of power if everything goes the Trump administration's way. The American Civil Liberties Union condemned the administration and the CIA for supporting her involvement in torture programs, and they said that while the CIA has said that it is, quote, committed to transparency, it has so far only granted senators and not the public access to some classified information about her. And the CIA released a 2001 memo last week, which they say supposedly cleared her of any responsibility for destroying evidence of torture. But I mean, who are we to trust? The CIA? Like, okay, well, they put out a piece of paper and said, look, we looked into it and she didn't do anything wrong, so this is why you should allow her to happen. And as the ACLU writes, the CIA shouldn't get to cherry pick which documents to declassify while hiding the most important torture records. And the nomination of Gina Haspel is also being opposed by a coalition of physicians and health professionals who say she is unfit to be in a position of authority. On May 3rd, the Physicians for Human Rights wrote a public letter noting that Haspel supervised the first black site in Thailand where, quote, agency personnel tortured detainees using waterboarding and other long outlawed techniques. Now, the letter goes into detail and says that she was in a position to know and influence aspects of a program that purposefully inflicted severe suffering and harm on individuals to whom the United States has yet to provide rehabilitation or redress as required under the UN Convention Against Torture. Not to mention that most of these people have still not been taken to trial or actually had a day in court. So yeah, they're accused of various forms of terrorism as the United States defines it, but they haven't actually been found guilty in any court of law. They're just being detained in secret prisons and tortured and questioned. It's pretty fucked up, no matter which way you look at it. And it goes on, but yeah, I would definitely recommend reading this article to kind of get a better full understanding. As I said, it will be out on Truth and Media maybe in about an hour or so, hopefully, as they get that editing done. And you can find it there at truthandmedia.com. And of course, you can always follow me and my work, and you'll get direct updates. I would say follow me at steemit.com/@dbroze. And yeah, so we just went over Syria, talking about that, important things you should know about what's going on with the funding, the chemical attacks, the white helmets, all that good stuff. And also know that as of next week, May 9th, so today's the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, next Wednesday, there'll be a hearing to discuss whether or not a known torturer should be promoted to a higher position where she will have more effect on whether or not the United States continues to torture people and kidnap them around the world. Now, this other topic, I'm just going to post a link and briefly mention it to you because it's something that you should know about that's going to happen pretty quickly here. I wrote about this about a week ago, talking about how the new authorization for use of military force, the AUMF, which is essentially a declaration of war because governments, the United States doesn't ever declare war officially. They just use these lame statements that say, we're going to go bomb some people and have a conflict. We'll get this legally approved later. Of course, technically, the United States is still at war based on 9/11 from a authorization of military force that they did then, and it's just been reapproved and reapproved. Well, people have been complaining and saying, we need to do something about this. We need to fix this system that allows the United States to just go to war wherever they want. We need to actually make them issue a declaration. So let's fix the authorization of use of military force. Let's have a brand new one. And that's what it sort of started out as. But as we've seen, these freaking senators, Bob Corker from Tennessee and Tim Kaine, who was formerly, I think he was vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton, they introduced Senate Resolution 59, which is the new authorization for use of military force, which is essentially just a blank check for not only Donald Trump, but for any future president. It codifies even further the United States' ability to go to war wherever they want. It also expands the number of groups that are on this list that the United States considers to be terrorists, and says that the United States can launch war against individual persons. I mean, on and on and on. And not only that, but it also expands the use of indefinite detention, because within this bill they mention the National Defense Authorization Act, which of course, as many of you know, in 2011 was signed by President Obama and allows for the indefinite detention of American citizens who are considered terrorists. And basically, as The Intercept explains, that this new detention provision could work as part of the authorization for use of military force. So the ACLU said that it's not only dangerous, it is unconstitutional, and is set up to never end. The Senate has a duty to kill this legislation immediately and show all members of Congress and the executive that abdicating Congress's duty to declare war stays with the people's representatives and no one else. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you think it's worth your time and energy to call your senators and your representatives, then this might be one of those things, because they are going to, this thing has been introduced. When I first wrote about it, they were just announcing the intention to introduce this Corker amendment, or the Corker authorization of use of military force. Now it's progressing. They're going to try to force it through. I guess they already tried to do it this past week, but some senators are speaking up and saying, hey, this is bullshit. Like, this is basically, if you thought the war on terror was about global war, and we have seen that, the United States now expanding into Africa, invading African countries that you've never heard of, further and further into the Middle East and elsewhere, and having this proxy new Cold War with Russia and with Iran. If you thought that was bad, this thing is going to allow for them to just go wherever the hell they want and launch war, you know, wherever the hell they want. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And, yeah, unfortunately, your tax dollars, if you're in the United States, they're paying for it. And I advise you, this is not legal advice, I advise you to try to opt out and pay as little taxes as possible whenever possible, and to you know, learn about tax resistance and tax, just learn about taxes and where your money's going, and you decide what's best for you, and if you want to continue to fund things like this. That's all I advise, that's all I recommend on that front. But please do check out that article, because it's crazy. Yeah, so if you think calling and emailing senators, apparently they're in office this week, if you think that's worth your time, then take some steps. I mean, at the end of the day, you can go hold banners, you can avoid paying taxes, but these fucking crazy people are trying to create world war whatever, and they're determined to use your money doing it. So until you stop paying them and allowing them to use your funds, it's going to keep happening. Now, on the good news front, briefly, USA Today, a new poll says nearly 2/3 of Americans have given up on political parties. Yes, I consider this to be good news. Some people are like, oh my God, this is the sign of America's decline. The youth is just not engaged in politics. And I say, hooray, awesome, fuck yes. Stop engaging in politics because that is a dead end. Now, I want to clarify. Technically speaking, politics is everything. Politics is the way that human beings interact and engage in the way we live our lives, right? That's one side of this. Then there's also electoral politics, is what most people, or governmental politics, which most people think of whenever they talk about that. I'm talking about governmental electoral politics, playing that game, as I said earlier, playing this lesser than whatever evils game. But politics in the sense of engaging with your fellow human being and how you do that and the way you communicate is absolutely important. Look up nonviolent communication, look up meditation, look into the self-reflection. The more you get to know yourself and understand yourself and love yourself, the easier it is to have empathy for other people and to work with them through, though they may be difficult or frustrating, you learn to work with other people and to have empathy and compassion. And that's what human politics, the interaction between human beings, is about. Electoral politics, governmental politics, is about degrading the human spirit, about division, about conquering, and about lies, about deception, about control. It's sold to us under this guise that all we have to do is elect the right people and we will be able to create this utopian situation where government, this tool, can be used to better all of us and to make sure everybody has all they need. And occasionally we may go to war, but only against really bad people. And sometimes government officials will get caught doing things, but it's just because they were a few bad apples. And sometimes cops will kill people, and sometimes corporations will destroy the environment, and sometimes all these people work together to propagandize the people and to fleece the people and to take from the people. Sometimes these things happen, but we promise it's not a symptom of the system itself. It's not a symptom of the government itself. So don't worry your pretty little head. Just keep engaging in the system, keep fighting for it, keep voting, keep participating, keep paying attention to the shit show, to the fucking television distraction, because everything's A-okay. That's what they want you to believe. In reality, you're wasting your time and energy by just spending any amount of time in the system. You should opt out, build something new. And I'm not just sort of throwing catchphrases at you. If you want to learn more about these, I've written several books on these topics. You can find those at theconsciousresistance.com/books. Damon, please throw that link below if you don't mind. And check out my solutions. Now let's move on to this, look a little bit closer at this story that's talking about Americans giving up on political parties. Many Americans will be staying out of the voting booth for the 2018 elections coming up, which, again, the media is trying to convince us these are the most important elections we've ever had. That's what they do every cycle. This is the most important election. If you don't participate, the world is going to shit. Somebody bad is going to get elected. Somebody bad is going to get elected. The world is going to shit because of these people, but it's going to a better place because of the people who are focusing on themselves and empowering themselves. According to poll takers USA Today and Suffolk University, nearly 2/3 of adult U.S. citizens will stay away from the polls during coming midterm elections, and they say they've given up on political parties and a system that they say is beyond reform and repair. And again, I say awesome. A majority of these non-voters would like to see a third party or multiple parties. We'll have, big surprise. People are sick of this freaking duopoly, these two parties, which are really just one party. The poll surveyed Americans who aren't registered to vote and who are registered but say they're unlikely to cast a ballot. Combined, the two groups include more than 100 million adults. 100 million adults who say they will not vote or have not registered to vote. Think about that. Think about the power of that. People see this as a bad sign that we have less and less people, even in the 2016 election, right? There was a certain amount of people that elected Trump and a certain amount of people that voted for Clinton. Then there was this huge portion of the population that didn't even bother to vote at all. What potential is within those people if we could motivate them and encourage them to actually get involved, to vote with their actions by getting involved in their local community, by decentralizing their economy, by investing in alternative currencies, whether that's paper currencies or cryptocurrencies or barter networks, or investing in localized decentralized food production so they can opt out of these gigantic industrial agricultural companies and stop supporting companies like Monsanto through their use of pesticides and genetically modified crops, and supporting local organic farmers and growing your own food when possible. I mean, what beauty is waiting to unfold within this 100 million people who have given up on the political system? That's what I think about when I hear these numbers, and I get excited thinking about this because it's beautiful, it's powerful. There's so much potential here. And that is what I want to tap into. If you're one of these 100 million and you're looking for solutions, my first suggestion is to check out a website called freedomcells.org, freedomcells.org, where you'll find plenty of other people who are looking for solutions that are not involving governmental or electoral politics. They're looking to connect with people in their communities to build solutions. So check that out if that's one possible solution. 68% of the independent voters and party registered voters who say they are unlikely to vote say they agree with the following statement. I don't pay much attention to politics because it's so corrupt. So think about that. People are waking up to just the fact that there is corruption. So this increased from 54% people who said that they wouldn't be involved with politics because of corruption from 2012. So in 6 years, it's gone from 54, according to this poll, 54% of people, American adults, out of that 100 million adults, 54% of them say they will not participate because it's a corrupt system. That was in 2012. Now we're at 68. Those are some pretty good numbers. That means if it continues at this trend, by the 2024-2028 election, there's going to be, I'd say, 90+% of the people who don't vote, 100 million plus, and let's assume that that number grows even, a couple hundred million, let's say 500 million plus, that 90% of those people plus would be deciding not to vote because of their views on how corrupt the system is. So that is the first step. You have to recognize the system's corrupt, and you have to step out of their indoctrination camp. They want you to believe that you can continue to play the game, and third parties are a waste of time, and fourth parties are a waste of time. I think most political parties are a waste of time because of how much corruption exists, but at least third parties and alternative parties offer you something different than the two corporate parties in the United States. And wherever you're listening from, I'm sure you've got problems with corporate political parties as well. But yeah, I take that as a positive in my book, that people are opting out of the system, or at least they're encouraged to not vote. They may not be opting out and seeking real world solutions and joining freedom cells and learning how to meditate and learning how to eat healthier and learning why non-aggression and self-ownership and the golden rule are important and living by these principles. They might not be doing that yet, but they're taking the first step in that direction by choosing to recognize that the system is corrupted beyond repair and beyond reform. And maybe they move to a place of apathy, but I'll tell you what, I can work with apathetic people who are non-voters. I can't work, I'm going to try, but I probably will have better luck with those people than I will with people who are voters who are completely indoctrinated. These people who love the Democrats or the Republicans, or even like some subset, they're like, oh, I'm part of the Tea Party movement. No, we're part of the progressive Democrats, or even like the diehard Libertarians or diehard Green parties. Like, they're good people, they recognize the two parties are corrupt, but then they're spending all their time and energy trying to petition and gather signatures and just so much energy and good people, again, really good people, trying to work within this system by saying, like, well, I'll choose a third party and maybe they'll let me. And you see so many, I have friends who run for office in various ways, and I'm proud of them for trying to do something, but at the end of the day, this system is so corrupted that they end up wasting their time, they get forced out, and even on the third party front, they can see the corruption. So it's sad, but that's the reality. So that's why we move beyond it and we start building something better. Okay, that's my suggestion. Now, I do have a couple of minutes here as we wrap up. I do want to remind you, though, this is episode 86 of the Conscious Resistance Live. I'm going to try to get back to doing this at least for the next couple of weeks because I'll be home next Friday and the following Friday. But in 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks from today, I'm kicking off the Liberate Your Mind Tour. Liberate Your Mind Tour. Check out theconsciousresistance.com/liberate. This is a 58-city national tour that I am launching, bringing a lot of the concepts that you hear me ranting and talking about today. I'm a journalist, so I'm going to bring my perspective as a journalist. I'm going to be doing a new presentation about all the different topics we need to liberate our minds from the education system, the political system, the pharmaceutical system, the health system, and really talking about how we can move past these things. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about decentralizing your life. Also, we're going to start off every event with a meditation, a guided meditation. And that's going to be really awesome because it's my partner is leading that, and she did this last year, and it's going to be even bigger this year, even better. Just more meditation, more in depth, and I think it's important for us to start the events off like that, especially because I have a lot to share and I talk for a long time. It's good to get yourself relaxed and your mind open. And then we're going to end the event with music from local psychedelic reggae band here in Houston called So Below. 58 cities. This is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. The Conscious Resistance Network and Bitcoin.com present the Liberate Your Mind Tour. Check out theconsciousresistance.com/liberate for more details. And we're going to volunteer in every single city we visit, whether that means going to a community garden, urban farm, helping the homeless out, cleaning a park, or cleaning a beach. We're going to be traveling around the country, contributing, as well as spreading meditation, spreading music, spreading liberation of the physical mind and body, as well as the spiritual self. So if that's something you're interested in, please do check out the website and look out for dates in your city. So my point is, I'll be home until that tour starts, so I'm going to at least get a couple more episodes of this. So look out for episode 58 coming up, 57 next week, and 58 the following week. So we'll stick to it for a couple of weeks until I hit the road, and it'll be infrequent again. But also, you can follow us every day live on the road as we travel across the United States. And I mentioned earlier I spoke in Portugal and Spain. I will be doing next year in 2019 a European tour, speaking, meditation, bringing these concepts, community building everywhere we go as we work to opt out of the systems, as I emphasized today on the show, not putting our energy and time into these systems, but creating something better. Now I'm going to end the show with two stories about culture that I think are important, and this is just kind of interesting. This is nothing really serious and political related, but culture is, I guess, more and more engaging and intersecting with politics, so this may be relevant to some of you, and I really want to get some viewer opinions on this and some listener comments, so feel free to comment below and I'll try to read some of your comments and we'll see what everybody thinks about this. But this is a story that I noticed from the New York Times. Teenagers' prom dress stirs furor in U.S. but not in China. I saw that headline and I was like, oh god, what the heck is this about? So women in China, they wear this, some women, they wear a traditional Chinese dress known as a qiangsim or qipo, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, qipo. And this article is about how this woman in high school in Utah in the U.S., 18-year-old woman, shares her pictures of prom night on social media, and she's wearing one of these traditional Chinese dresses. And the picture has been retweeted now like 45,000 times, and a bunch of people start attacking her saying, "My culture is not your dress," wrote one woman. "I'm proud of my culture, and for it to be simply subject to American consumerism and cater to a wide audience is parallel to colonial ideology." So people are accusing her of cultural appropriation. Really interesting, right? So says some Twitter users who describe themselves as Asian Americans seized on the woman's dress as an example of cultural appropriation, a sign of disrespect and exploitation. To other Asian Americans, they said the criticism was silly. "This isn't okay," wrote one user. "I wouldn't wear traditional Korean, Japanese, or other traditional dress, and I'm Asian. I wouldn't wear traditional Irish or Swedish or Greek dress either. There's a lot of history behind these clothes. Sad." Now this is where it gets kind of interesting, is eventually this tweet and this whole fiasco reaches Asia, the social media sphere of Asia, various parts of Asia, and different people in Asia kind of expressed that they thought it was silly, that they're like, why are the Americans upset about this? This is not anything to be worried about. In fact, some of them felt proud. This one user says, "I'm very proud to have our culture recognized by people in other countries." This was posted on WeChat, which is one of the biggest social media platforms across Asia. Another user says, "It's ridiculous to criticize this as a cultural appropriation from the perspective of a Chinese person. If a foreign woman wears a qipo and thinks she looks pretty, then why shouldn't she wear it?" And this also goes on to say that some people in China asked, well, are we culturally appropriating Americans or whites or Christians or whatever when we celebrate Christmas and Halloween? And I don't know, I just want to get into this. Like, what are your thoughts on this idea of cultural appropriation? It's a topic I've touched on before. I do think in some ways there could be legitimate claims to cultural appropriation, but I think also it's going to depend on the individual. The other thing is here, this idea that one single person, Asian American or someone from China, can speak for an entire group of people is ridiculous. That's what the idea of collectivism is known about, that one individual, that all individuals in a certain group are the same. So this would say all Chinese people are going to be offended if this woman wears a dress. All, all Asian people drive this way, or all, natives act this way, or all different things like that. And even people within these groups will sometimes collectivize it. Another form of collectivism is this sort of identifying with the government, right? Well, some people will say, they'll talk about like war, right, and history, and they'll say like an American talking to a British person and say, "Oh, we really kicked your ass back in the whatever war," and just that we, right? We, who the hell is we? the U.S. government, the military? Were you alive then, or did you actually participate in that war? Did you bomb people? Did you kill people? Did you invade people? Because if not, then stop identifying with this. And this is just, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but this is another form of collectivism. I think that's a problem with this situation. Cultural appropriation could be legitimate in some cases, I would offer, but people, and maybe this is a first world problem, that people in the West and America, that we do have it better than other places. And so this allows some people to just get to the point where they're criticizing an 18-year-old girl's dress on prom night and accusing her of like some horrible crime. And people from parts of Asia are kind of like, what? What is the big deal, right? Now, another sort of cultural topic here that is interesting to me, this tribal pastor, and this is dealing with natives, indigenous people of the United States, which is obviously a big, important part of my work and something that I'm closely identified to, and I care as somebody who is learning more about my indigenous culture and my native ancestry, my family, and where we come from. I didn't grow up on a reservation, so I don't know much about my family on that side. But this says that a Native American feather dancer asked the U.S. government on Thursday to end its restrictions on tribes using eagle feathers in religious ceremonies. This petition was filed by Robert Soto, the vice chairman of the Lipan Apache tribe of Texas, and it comes more than a decade after an undercover federal agent raided his powwow and confiscated roughly 50 eagle feathers during a ceremony. So they're saying that they have to stop, they can't use eagle feathers because they're protected, and this is, you know, endangers for the animals, and he's saying that he should have religious protections to do so. And basically the petition states Native Americans have worshipped with feathers since time immemorial. For many, denying them access to feathers is like denying a Christian the use of a Bible, rosary, or holy water, or forbidding Orthodox Jews from using a Torah scroll in worship. Yet federal law criminalizes their sincere religious beliefs. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I know that there's people out there who would say like, hey, we have to protect the animals, right? We have to protect the environment. And so what do we do whenever somebody's religious beliefs conflict with protecting the environment or protecting an animal? I mean, this is a tricky subject because, again, we're talking about culture, right? And also, I think this kind of gets into other topics when it comes to diet. I know there's a lot of vegans who attack, just in general, people who use meat of any kind, and I'm a vegan, and I definitely feel the pain that animals feel going to slaughterhouses and all these horrible situations. But I also know that we have big cultural differences, and depending on where you grow up and what part of the world, you may have only been raised or exposed to constantly using animals as food. That doesn't mean that I think that you have to continue to do that and that there's no alternatives. I think that that's the beauty, is that we are evolving, and there's new forms of living and bettering ourselves and empowering ourselves that don't have to involve enslaving and exploiting animals or anything, or any other forms of life, or the earth, or anything. But that involves conversations, that involves learning, that involves growing, that doesn't involve just attacking people. So what are your thoughts on this, both these situations? Like, is it cultural appropriation to wear a Chinese dress? Is it, you know, should somebody's culture, their religious beliefs and desire to use feathers in a ceremony, does that override the desire or the need, some would say, to protect an animal, to protect the environment? Is one more important than the other? And who decides that? Is it okay for the state to decide that? Should individuals be free to do this on their own land, their own property? I would love to hear your thoughts and your ideas on that. Feel free to comment below. I'm just going to scroll through some of these comments as I wrap up. Thank you guys so much for listening. And if you haven't subscribed to the Conscious Resistance Network. You can follow us at theconsciousrresistance.com. We are still on YouTube, and I still have this Facebook page, but we're moving more and more to decentralized platforms. So check out steemit.com/@dbroze. I'll post that link right now. That's my personal account, but it's also where I post all of my content that comes from the Conscious Resistance. And you can also find the Conscious Resistance Network on minds.com for those who are on Minds. And again, you can find me on MeWe @dbroze. So we're on Steemit, Minds, MeWe, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, DTube, all those platforms. Find us out there. Somebody says, only in America does this stuff happen. I'd probably agree so, maybe. I don't know how I get here. I don't know how I got here. Some people, I made a comment to someone, like, I sort of joking, like, do you not know how to use Facebook? I didn't mean to be rude, but my point was, if you're scrolling and you end up at a video and you don't like it, like if you hear me talking and you think I'm crazy or whatever, you can just keep scrolling. Like, it's just that easy. Thank you, Damon, for posting the links. Yes, I did see that story that leaked document about a week or two about mind control. I don't know what to think about it. It wasn't a government document yet, so I'm not sure if it's something to really make a big deal about yet. But we know that they have that technology, so it's not really a surprise. I resonate with your unique perspective, Derek. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for the thumbs up. It's freezing. I agree, but he's better than we've had in some time now. I guess you're talking about Trump. I don't know. I'm not even going to argue if Trump's better than one piece of shit is better than the other. Like, I don't really care. Assad didn't do it. We know that. Most, though, it's sad. Yeah, I agree. Probably this is another bullshit weapons of mass destruction kind of lie that we're seeing. The only fact I can see is that the Syrian people are in a world for hurt. Yes, I believe so. You do understand that there's not enough factual information released ever from any side of the conflict to where the average person could have any sort of informed perspective. I agree. That's my point with the whole report I did is I looked at every report I could find, from independent art journalism to mainstream journalism to foreign journalism to American journalism, and I think that I got a pretty good perspective of what's actually taking place and what's not taking place. And at this point, we're being lied to by all sides. So don't support war blindly. Don't support war at all, I would say. Thank you guys so much for supporting this. One more time, I'm going to be in Libertopia in San Diego this weekend. If anybody's around, come say hi. It's at, I don't know, check out libertopia.org if you want to come hear about my message of holistic activism and holistic anarchism. I'll be there. If not, follow us on YouTube, Steemit, DTube, Facebook, MeWe, Minds, wherever else you want to find us. And I'll see you guys on the road, hopefully as part of the Liberate Your Mind tour. Check it out at theconsciousresistance.com/liberate. Thanks for listening. Don't forget about these important stories. Spread the word. Find a way to change the world. Start by working on yourself and go out there and do something important. Enjoy your weekend. And remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.